is 11 o'clock, and I know people are still signing on, but I think we should get started. So thank you all for being here, attending our webinar on competency-based training. And we have a great presentation here from Sue Mueller, who's here from Tooling U. She has over 30 years experience in training and development, and I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself. I also wanted to let everyone know that our Vice President of Workforce Development, Brianna Schultz, she's also on the line, and as well as the Manufacturing Works Program Manager, Apprenticeship Program Manager, Linda D. So if you have questions about anything we're doing here at Manufacturing Works, feel free to also enter those questions in the chat box, and we'll be sure to get your questions answered about that as well. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sue for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, and good morning to everybody. So we can move to the next slide, and you'll get a chance to see what I look like, so I'm not just a voice coming to you over your speakers. As Kristen said, I've got 30 years of experience really working as a workforce development specialist across a wide variety of areas, including soft skills, ethics and compliance, diversity, harassment, as well as now looking at the importance of training within the technical skills. Today, our focus is going to be on competency-based education as it relates to you as manufacturers. And what we're going to talk about and what we'll share today are just some ideas on ways to think differently about the training that's going on in your organization and ways that we can enhance what is happening. We know that there's a gap, and we know that we really need to focus on not only fulfilling that gap from maintaining employees that you currently have, but also getting them up and ready sooner. So if we look ahead, there's two quotes and 2 points that I want to share with you. And what we see on this next slide is that the top condition of a manufacturer's competitiveness is access to a talented workforce. And the key here really is that this isn't news to anybody. The job can't get done if we don't have people to do the work. People can say, well, robots are going to take over, or automation is going to take over. But the reality is automation or smart technology can only do so much. So the challenge when you really think about it as employers is that it's really going to be multifaceted. You think about the word talent, it can be defined in a lot of different ways. One of those 3 areas is knowledge and skills. So what is it that people know, and are they able to perform and put into action what they know? The other has to do with opportunity. Is the talent pool, and are people talented enough to know what their opportunity is? So although it's a kind of a different way to look at talent, if you don't know what's out there, you don't know if you have the skills. You don't know if you have the passion. And that passion is the third part related to a talented workforce. When we look at the new generations coming in, they care about their work. They want to feel like they're contributing to the overall good of society. So putting people in roles where they have the knowledge and the skills and the opportunity to grow in a place that they're passionate and feel good about, you're going to get an employee that's going to be more long-term. So if we put these 3 together, where they intersect is truly where we're going to find the most committed employees. Until then, employers are going to struggle. They're going to struggle to fill out the gap that we're all aware of. So I want to draw your attention to a few statistics. And these came from a study in 2013. It was a study that was done by SME, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, our parent company, along with Brandon Hall and Training Magazine. Next slide, please. When we look at this, it's important to ask ourselves a couple of things. Why change now? Haven't we been changing already? Haven't you as employers been growing already? Aren't you already training? Aren't there things you're doing now? What is it that we have to do differently? And of course you've been training. You're orienting people when they come on board. You're providing mandatory training related to safety, different HR training. You're giving training on procedures, other essential items. But these statistics tell a little bit of a different story. So we're going to look at these. And as we look at these statistics, if you'd like to comment in the comment box and agree that you've had these thoughts, feel free to put in a loud yes. Or if you haven't had these thoughts, put in a no. And at the end, we'll ask you what your secret is. So that first statistic is saying that 64% of manufacturers agree that productivity is down because people aren't skilled enough. If you've ever said that in your role or in meetings, in teams, feel free to put a yes up in that chat box. The next box talks about quality, and 41% of manufacturers are saying and believe that quality truly has suffered because employees are not as technically able. Their skills are not where they need to be with the changing pace of manufacturing. So if you've said that, feel free to put a yes in the chat box, kind of like an informal poll, things that we're looking at here. So why aren't people skilled enough? Why aren't they meeting the quality levels that you're looking for? If that's not happening, that next statistic is a little bit scary. Over half, 56% of manufacturers share that they're not able to grow because they can't find people. So now we can't meet production needs, we can't keep our quality standards where they are, and we can't grow to where business is demanding. It makes it hard to create a strategic plan. What that means is as an employer, you really need to think outside the box. So I want to share a story with you. A company that we worked with out in California that we're providing training for, that what was interesting was it's a family-owned business. And for years, they've been turning down work. We can't work any faster. If we try to work faster, we're going to wear our people out. If we try to work faster, our quality is going to suffer. We don't have the space. We don't have the people. They came up with every reason why they couldn't grow. And it got to a point where, unfortunately, the family business was sold. And it made the employees a little bit scared because it was sold to an investment firm. So this investment group came in and they said, we're not going to shut you down. Our purpose is to invest in you, to grow, so that you don't have to say no anymore. And what did the employees start to think? Great, here come the robots, here comes automation, we're all going to be out of jobs. But that wasn't the issue. That really wasn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to grow with people. They needed to grow their space. So what they did, and the investment firm and company came in, they brought in a lot of consultants, they brought in different strategists, and they watched. They watched what people were doing. They watched how they were working. They noted all the good things that were happening. They knew how lean they were working. They knew that their processes were down pat. And then they talked to the employees. What are the, why would you leave? What are the reasons that if you were to change from this job to another, what did they discover? And what they discovered really was that there is a long drive. This is California. People were driving 90 minutes in for this job and 90 minutes back home. And it wasn't because they were far away. It was just because of traffic. So they knew if they were going to have to increase production and they wanted to grow, they were going to have to purchase a larger facility. And they found one. What was key here was instead of being close to where this facility was, it was where the people were coming from. So they purchased a building, and they had a plan that they wanted to, after 60 days of signing that lease on that building, they wanted to have production up and running. Employees thought they were crazy. But they let people apply for jobs in that new facility because they also knew you can't staff a brand new facility with all brand new people and meet production needs and quality needs. You had to have some experienced workers there, which they did. So they took half of their workforce from their current location, moved them to the new location. But in order to do that, they started to train them. So they created individual development plans for everybody within that facility, trained them. They're about 30 days away from opening that new facility. They're starting to bring in their new employees and put them through some basic training at the current facility so that they believe they'll be up and running as they set their target 60 days after signing the lease. Fast, it's aggressive, but they came up with a reason to do it. And what did they give the employees who took the jobs in that new location? They gave them back almost 2.5 hours of their day because their commute was reduced from 90 minutes to 20. Increased satisfaction. The new generations want to work. They don't want to work overtime. They won't want to spend their life driving. They want to be able to go out and experience things. They just got back 2 hours of every day. So thinking like that is a different way to go ahead and be able to expand your business. Will that work for everyone? No. It was a different way to look at a growth problem. And so now they're attacking it really from a couple of different angles. That next statistic in the lower left-hand corner is that 78% can't find qualified candidates, which leaves you with a few options. Where are we going to look? Where are we going to find qualified candidates? And are we asking the right things for what qualifications are needed? Have we really looked at what is needed for that position that you have a gap? Or are we sometimes asking ourselves for too much right up front? Creatively, I'm sure many of you are doing this, are looking for different sources for employees, looking to partner perhaps with high schools, with colleges, staffing agencies, veteran services, prisons, looking for programs where you can do boot camps and bring people in and train them prior, looking at internships, and even just as it's manufacturing month, taking a look at bringing people in and creating awareness. Because it's not just a skills gap, it's also an awareness gap. People need to know what your jobs are like. What's going on inside those four walls? How is it being done? How are people being treated? What is the environment like? So taking a look there is something as well, looking to define and redefine what qualifications are needed, and then looking at creative ways to bring people up to speed before walking in your door and applying. Which leads then to that next one. Once you get people in the door, what kind of a plan do you have? If 54% of employers do not have a plan to address the skills gap, if you're one of those, you have to ask yourself why. And what's important here is that it's a gap everywhere, not just a gap at the entry level. It's to continue to grow so that those individuals on your team that will be retiring don't take all of their knowledge and all of their skill away. That knowledge and skill that they have up front now needs to be shared. So having a plan to share that knowledge is part of addressing this gap as well. Nice to see here that one individual is doing a job fair at prisons. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. That's excellent. It's a creative and unique way. Partnerships. It's going to be an important part of filling this gap. So here comes that final box. It's the lowest number. We think maybe that's a good thing. It's a low number. But if we read it, the question is flipped. And unfortunately, only 18% of companies have what we would consider, or what they consider, very clear, defined job roles with assigned competencies. If that is you, if you are an organization that has taken the time or is starting to take the time to have assigned job roles and really defined competencies, we want to make sure that you speak and you share that example at the end of today's session, because it's important to learn from one another. Sometimes it can seem like a really scary and overwhelming task. Maybe that's why only 18% are doing it. But it's going to be important, which we'll see as we continue on here. So with our next slide, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Use this word competency. And really, it's a word that's most often used with educators or training departments. In its simplest form, it's an ability and a skill. But what we really need to do is to break that down. So what is competency related to you as a manufacturer? And what it truly is the standardization of on-the-job training. How are we going to make sure that training is consistent and comprehensive for every employee within your walls? No matter whether it's a leadership or soft skill, a technical hard skill, or a strategic skill. All those different levels need to have consistent and standardized training. It's a roadmap of sorts. So if we break it down, it's the realization that as a manufacturer, one way to plan for the future is truly by having a clear understanding of what is needed at every level in every job. So if you take a look and you step back and you look at an org chart doesn't really tell you enough. It tells you who's who and who reports to where, and you have a job title. But competencies and standardization of training is going to break each of those down into smaller, more manageable nuggets, into things that are related to knowledge. What is it that someone needs to know? And it's need versus want. Do you want them to know it, or do they need to know it? Same thing when you've got kids and they need that new pair of jeans. Do they need them or do they want them? At some point, there's a line that crosses from a want to a need. That goes down to breaking down your job competencies. So what do I need to know? Do they need to know how to read blueprints, program a CNC machine? Do they need to know how to wire or just how wiring works? There's a difference in what they need to know at every level. So taking the time to understand that is key. Then it's, what are the skills? So once we know what someone needs to know, what are those skills related to that knowledge? How to perform something? And breaking down those skills and those patterns so that they can be taught, so someone can obtain the skills. So it's one thing to know something, it's another to know how to do it, but it's a third is, do you have the ability? You might have a strong desire, but you might not be really good at fine motor skills. You might be a phenomenal welder, but you get scared in confined spaces. So depending on what skills are needed and where they are to be performed is that third level. So we're really looking at knowledge, skills, and abilities. Putting those three together related to a job role will create that standardization of training, which is truly what competency-based education is all about. That final step then is verifying that the people can in fact perform that skill, do the job to the standards needed and set by your organization. Are they within margin for quality? Are they within time of production need? Those are the things that you will then look for. And having someone who knows how to verify a skill on your team is an important thing as well. And it's a different set of skills and knowledge and abilities. So with that, I think we can all agree. You look at the next thing, kind of summing up what competency-based education is. It shows you that, true or false, I would believe you all would say true, that while bodies may fill a manufacturing plant, competent employees get the job done correctly. Because there's nothing worse than rework. Maybe there is, but I kind of tend to believe that rework is something that if you can minimize, you can be a whole lot more successful. So I think we can agree that that's true. When you have people in the right job, in the right position, you're going to minimize your runners. So, another kind of fun thing to see is if you want to put a yes up there, it's sad if you had someone that's a runner, a new term. They go to lunch and they don't ever come back. They don't call or they don't show up for a day and you don't know why. They've run away from you. Why have they run away? Have they run away because they were uncomfortable learning? It was too hard. It wasn't a good fit. They realize they don't have the passion for it. When they don't come back, you can't ever ask them. So trying to build an environment where we have fewer runners is what we're going to look for next. So what we see here on this next slide is what are ways to improve your standardization of on-the-job training, of OJT. First is we want to, and the key word in that first bullet is sustain a qualified pipeline. It's one thing to build a pipeline, but if you can't sustain it, then all you keep doing is building. It's like rework. It's that revolving door. We have to build and rebuild and rebuild. We want to try to sustain it, and that implies that there's going to be a path. Second is the reevaluation of the idea of time-based training, that just because you put in the time, you are now skilled. So just because you've worked there 5 years does not mean you can be CEO. Different set of skills. Just because you've worked there for 2 years does not mean you can be lead. Different set of skills. Because you've worked in one department and have talked to people in the other department and you've watched them for a long amount of time doesn't mean you can move on. So really making sure that we have the alignment of skill versus time spent. The third bullet is that validation. Oftentimes, and I'm sure you've seen it, whether you've seen it at your current employer, with your current employees, or other places, making sure that the skill truly can be performed. So it's kind of like, teaching your child to ride a bike. They've seen people ride a bike. They've been on the bike with training wheels. You've held the back of that seat for a while, then you let them go. When you let them go, you're trying to validate whether they truly have balance and they can do it, or are they going to fall? inevitably they're going to fall. You have to make sure when they fall that they're protected. Same thing in your organization. When you're trying to validate a skill, you have to make sure it's done in a safe environment where they're not going to get hurt, but where you're also not going to ruin an expensive machine, or you're going to impact your production or meeting a goal for a customer. So who you have there on your team to validate a skill is going to be important. The final bullet, and this is so important for the millennials and Zs entering your workforce, they need to know that there is a clear career path, that it's not a job, it's a career. And with this career, I'm going to continue to grow and contribute. So looking forward, planning ahead, don't be afraid to share the strategic direction as it relates to an employee career path. Example, I had a student working for a company up in Minnesota, just finished his HVAC, went into the company, and first thing he asked within 30 days on the job is, what do you think is going to be changing? Where do you see skills that you don't have now that it might be smart for me to work on? And the manager was surprised because no one had asked them that question before. It's always the other way. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, the tables were turned and the individual asked, what skills do you think will be needed? What are you planning for growth? And they said, well, we're probably going to have to move into more automation and robotics. That's excellent. I want to learn about that because I want to be here and I want to be at the top and ready when that change is made. So it was an employee, a brand new employee, who actually helped to turn the tables with that particular employer on the discussion about a career, wanting to stay and wanting to show loyalty. No guarantee that the person's going to stay, but it changed the way the conversation flowed. So if we look at that, what do we see as some benefits and value? Next slide, please. If we're trying to, and when training is standardized, the incumbent employees, so those people working for you now, know what they need to advance. It's not a secret. It's not, who's going to get the job? It's, what skills do I need to get the job? Again, the conversation changes. Part of it has to do with exposure. What are you doing to show people what knowledge and skills are needed? Because everybody thinks the grass is greener, not just at another employer, but in a different department. Oh, look at them over there. That looks like it's much easier. Oh, well, that looks like it would be interesting. That looks more challenging. But they haven't really been able to get a chance to observe it and think about it from what are the skills needed? What is the knowledge needed? So those conversations are important to begin having. Asking them then to demonstrate the capability. If you want to move here, we need to see you perform this skill. We need then to verify and check that skill. And then that last piece, because if you're looking for sustaining competency across your organization, you need people that can teach the skill. People that can coach and mentor, that can put people back on the right path if a mistake is made, but also people that can see a hidden talent, see a strength, and find it. Don't want to say find those superstars, but find the next growth opportunity. So if I ask you to step back and think about employees at your organization, can you automatically think of 5 people? Can you step and say, I know where they need to be next in my company? Can you find 10 people? Do you know that path for 100% of your employees? If you don't know their direction, is there a direction that can be offered? So those are the important points about putting some things together. And when we look at that, what we'll find, next slide please, are that there are truly 5 benefits to competency-based education. 5 things that we look at that will benefit the employer, each of you, as well as those employees that you've taken the time to invest in. The first benefit, next please, is that there's faster time to validated skill. What does that mean? In many times, we looked at really large-scale accomplishments. So you looked at something in long term. And again, this new generation, they don't want to wait 5 years for a promotion. So they'll say to you, well, I want to be promoted soon and I want to be promoted often. Old school thinkers, people like myself, people in Gen X, people older than me, we think, well, what? You want to be supervisor in a year? You want to be manager in a year? You want to be the head of the department? That's not really what they're asking for. They're asking for small steps, small wins. They've been brought up to continue to learn. Learning is part of every day, and they know how to get information quickly. So the faster time to a validated skill happens simply because we've broken it down. So go back to that example of riding the bike. We don't say they've accomplished it when the training wheels come off. We accomplish it the first time they pedal and move forward. You've done the first thing right. You get, that skill. The pedaling skill has been validated. You know how to pedal and steer. Now you know how to go fast, or you can turn. So you break it down, and that's obviously very simplistic, but that's what we're looking at. So you take something, and it's a long-term, long-range skill to get from point A to point B, and you celebrate with success and broken down competencies along the way. What do they need to know here? Level 1. When that's done, they can go to level 2. Still might take them 2 years, but in 2 years, they've leveled 4 times. Doesn't always mean it has to be a new title. It might be just a new badge. Things of that nature are one way to look at it. The next one, the second benefit, is that learning is linked to the industry need and individual career planning. Like the example of doing a job fair at a prison, there are entry maps anywhere that people can come in and off into your organization. People can come in as a high school intern. Veterans can enter. So they're learning and they're picking up knowledge from a lot of different places. How many of you test and know where their knowledge is and have created profiles? Veteran from this branch who served in this function will probably have these skills. If you're not doing that type of a validation, maybe one of your partners is. Perhaps the MEP, perhaps the community college, perhaps another organization, a vet organization. And they're saying they've come in with these skills that we've validated. The learning is going to be directly linked to that career path, and people can get on and get off. What's interestingly happening with the different generations is in the past, you would use your skills and keep it within the same industry. So it wasn't necessarily that you were always staying at the same employer, but you were staying within the same industry. What's happening now, especially as we chunk down our competencies and our skills and our knowledge and our abilities, is those skills become portable and they become applied in different places. So the skill that's being used at your organization, someone may decide now to go to a hospital setting and work in maintenance, or vice versa. So what's happening is they're still using those skills, but they're using them in different environments where they can learn the value of that skill to the outcome of the organization that they're supporting. If we look to that next slide, one of the things that we see happening then is a flipped classroom. The benefit is there's faster learning and less time off the job. Because I'm sure as many of you are sitting here listening, you're thinking, oh, this is going to take so much time. We don't have time for training. We don't have time to pull people off the line. How are we going to make this happen? How many of you, when you need to learn something for a home repair at home, or you need to learn how to do something, need how to cook something new, go to YouTube. You learn very quickly because you're seeing it. It doesn't mean you've accomplished the skill, but you see, you have the knowledge, you have an understanding of the steps, of the process. And you can also say to yourself, I wonder if this is something I can or cannot do myself. So for example, we have an instant hot water heater here, and the mixing valve was leaking. And called them, and they sent over the mixing valve and thought I put it in correctly, and it was still leaking. I called them back, and I tried to find something on YouTube, but my particular model wasn't there, and I am by no means technical. Called them back, and they said, well, you didn't replace the O-rings. I said, well, why would I? You didn't tell me to. So maybe I'd seen a video, maybe I was walked through the steps, but I didn't truly understand. I didn't have that skill. So the knowledge portion of what you can learn from online is going to be key. If I could have seen someone do that and seen those steps ahead of time, I wouldn't have missed that step. I may not have always installed it correctly because I'm still learning, but I wouldn't have made that mistake. So the value of being able to see someone do a job, to see that task or skill being performed, will minimize the amount of time that you have to do for hands-on. Because my guess as well is that some of you may not have machines that are available just for teaching. So again, partnering with someone that can teach that hands-on in a lab. Or perhaps you don't have people that can do the training. Bringing someone else in will shorten the time. One company we worked with discovered that it was less costly to pay overtime than it was to rehire, to continue to hire more people coming in. So when their individuals are done or their job is complete, they can stay after at that employer and take their online courses. They'll be paid overtime. They're encouraged, if there's any downtime, take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, do some learning during your regular hours. But you have this number of days to complete this many of hours before we go on and we do the hands-on training. And what they found is people are motivated. They're excited to stay. They're doing it right there. And they're not motivated by the money of the overtime because they see many doing it in 10-minute chunks. I have 10 minutes. I'm caught up on my work. I'm going to go and learn. So that's less time off the job. We look then at the next and fourth benefit. What we really see is that validation is ensured. And again, it's making sure that people are truly capable of doing the skill that you've set up, that you're looking for there. So the verification is making sure that what you're training and the skill that you're doing is what you're looking for. The validation that somebody who is functional in that area understands gives the, yep, you're ready to go. And then you can make a decision as an employer. Do I want to do any type of official accreditation? Am I looking for an industry standard accreditation? Am I looking for a full apprenticeship? Does my employees see it valuable to get college credits for this? Do they need continuing education? What is it? Or is it something that we are going to do from a company credential standpoint? Company badges. Are we going to make it visible? We've heard of employers that as people continue to step up, that as new skills or new levels that they've defined at their organization are learned, they're added to the back of a company t-shirt. It does two things. It lets people take pride in what their knowledge is and what they've learned. Second thing it does is it lets you know who you can go to ask a question. Oh, I see that person has completed this level. I'm interested in that. I'm going to go find out what it was about. What did they have to do to hit that next level achievement? A couple of different ways that you're then able to accredit or put a stamp on it. The fifth and final benefit that we see truly is that the skills gap is addressed. You're not having people waiting at the edge to take a leap to that next level. They're continually crossing as you're building that path. You've laid out a path that fits the needs of your organization from a strategic direction, from a department and the way that the work is being flowed, the way that workflow operates and goes, and also from an employee development standpoint. They each know and can clearly determine where they are going. Again, no promises that they're going to stay with you forever, but while they're with you, they're working at the highest and most efficient and skilled level possible because they've continually been growing and moving. It gives the advantage to the employees of increased satisfaction. They're in the right spot. They know that they're working to their abilities, that they're properly trained. And it lets them understand what they need to know to move ahead. There's no secret. Why did Jack get the promotion over John? They're able to know because they know what skills had to be accomplished. It's an open opportunity for everyone because that path is clear. And that's what you look for there. We move on, we see this isn't really anything new. I don't know how many of you have gone onto the Department of Labor website, but what you see there, again, nothing new. It's an advanced manufacturing competency model. And there's an assumption that certain skills and certain knowledge levels are obtained before someone even applies for the job or walks in your door. That has to do with that bottom level. There's this expectation that people have a work ethic. There's an expectation that they understand what it means to be professional, to call in if they're not going to be there. There's an understanding that they have some basic integrity and interpersonal skills. That may or may not be the case. And so sometimes those things have to be reiterated and trained upon. What does that mean for your organization? What does that mean there for an employee? If you continue on, there's the assumption as well that certain things have been taught in our schools. But it doesn't mean that that knowledge has been retained. So perhaps you need to do assessments up front. Does the individual have the science background that they need to have for this particular skill or the level that you are asking them to enter in? What is their math knowledge? Can they pass a measurement test? Can they read the measurements that need to be read? Use the instruments that they need to have? What is their writing? What is their reading level? So some of these things, again, pre-employment screening can be done, assessments can be done, or can be built into your training plan. You look next at that next level of just some common competencies across the workplace. Has to do with planning and organizing or problem solving. And sometimes we don't think about those skills as entry-level skills. But take a look at doing the same job across different shifts. Sometimes it's often presented that the person who's working on the night shift merely is working there because they want more money. But what it really may be is they need to be better at problem solving. They may need to be better as independent workers. So looking at some of those levels when you put people in their positions is also key and important. And then that next level is really where we get to the industry-wide technical competencies. What does it mean to work in production? What does it mean to work in supply chain? And you can continue to break this down. You don't have to hit every one of these ideas on each level. It's knowing which part, which of that bucket, what area, how much of that piece do you need for that particular job role that you're in. So when we advance next and break it down, what you see is that our organization, Chilling U-SME, has designed a competency framework. Next slide, please. That complements the Department of Labor's. Within each and every one of these, this was introduced in 2014. We have more than 60 job roles identified. What that does is break down the job and the level within that job. What are some competencies and some knowledge that people have to have there? It gives you a ready place to start. You can look at something that's been developed and designed and say yes or no. This does or does not fit for the way our organization defines that job role. So there are ways to go ahead and break that down. And the next slide will show you how that's broken down. For example, within a CNC programmer as part of a production machinist competency model, broken into knowledge objectives as well as skills objectives. So the knowledge piece can be done with online learning. Let's give people the knowledge. Let's have them read. Let's have them watch what is being done. Then we're going to teach the skills. How are those skills being taught? Making sure that we're demonstrating correct techniques, making sure that they can demonstrate that technique consistently, not once, but over time. And then taking it back on the job and showing that is also important. So one of the final things I want to share with you is an example. And on this next slide, it's just a picture of some different learning methodologies and ways that people are teaching. But an example of an organization that we're working with who knows that they're faced with this gap. And they saw that they kind of defined their jobs into three main areas. They looked at shop practices, mechanical systems, hydraulics and pneumatics, electricity, automation, and fabrication. So they looked at those 6 areas and they said, let's break down from entry level, from point A to point B, where we want these people to be. And they took each one of those and broke them into 3 levels. So there's level 1, 2, and 3 of shop practices. 1, 2, and 3 fabrication. You get the picture. So that they do is within each one, at each level, 3 to 6 online courses that they've asked the individuals to complete on their time in 30 days. So you have 30 days to get through these courses, spend 3 to 6 hours learning and getting some knowledge. Then they've partnered with a local college or local training organization for the hands-on piece. And they've identified consistent learning plans. They said, this is what we need these people to know related to hydraulics, level 1. And created a lab that's anywhere from 4 hours to 24 hours, depending on what skills they need to learn to be able to demonstrate. When they pass through that in that lab setting, they then take them back on the job. And they say, we're going to have you perform this in a safe environment with someone watching you to give you feedback. And we're going to be there as your coach on this position until we believe you're ready to have considered that a validated skill. What they're expecting and what they're anticipating is that each level is going to take 12 to 18 months. So they'll go through these 6 topics, level 1, in about a year. What does this mean for that person who enjoys learning, wants to continue to learn new skills? Is every 2 months they're learning something new. So they're moving from shop practices to mechanical systems or however, and they can go through at their own pace. They're looking and they're saying, in the end, we're anticipating that someone will go from point A to point B in 3 years versus making someone stay at point 1 until they have the skills and 3 years later getting that new skill appropriate, under their belt and learning it all then. Learning what you need to know at the time that you need to know it. Because there's that old phrase, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And that has to do with both knowledge as well as your technical skills and abilities. So that's what we're looking at there. You see on the next slide, there's a lot of different organizations that Tooling U-SME has worked with. We're here to be a resource for you. We have a lot of different resource materials and information that we can share with you, some of which we'll make sure that we have sent out a new report that we've just done on the pulse of the manufacturing industry. We'll send that as a follow-up, along with a white paper that goes into detail a little bit more of what we covered today. But would love to just answer any questions that you may have. And I see one question that's come in, which is if you are a Tooling U customer, do you have access to these competency frameworks, and how do you locate them? Absolutely. If my email is on this last page, so Gretchen, if you want to email that to me, I'll put you in touch with the right individual on our team that can work with you to find those frameworks for you and have that discussion and make sure that you're not overwhelmed and looking at all 60, but that you're given the ones that you need to look for. We see on this last picture here, it's always good to say we know something, but we aren't always doing things the right way. My guess is that none of this is really rocket science to you, but hopefully we take a step back and we re-look and we think a little bit differently, so we're not the person standing on that chair hanging up that safety poster. So what other questions? We have one here about, will Tooling U work for a manufacturer that does not do tooling or CNC? Absolutely. We have a lot of different topics. And again, Brian, I'll be happy to put you in touch with the individual that will work with you at your location to help find out where your needs are in the different areas. Welding, robotics, additive, whatever it may be. We can come in and we can do job analysis. We can come in and watch and create those job role descriptions for you. We can also come in and do a train the trainer. So you make people that are really skilled and have an interest in being a lead and being a trainer, someone to help validate that skill, aren't sure how, happy to come in and do that for you as well as our online courses. Excellent. So Brian, please reach out. Again, my email is on this last slide as well. What other questions do we have this morning? We still have time. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, be happy to unmute you to share a success story. Someone that has been working to create job roles or has seen something that you would like to share with others. That would be excellent to hear as well. Kristen, are you getting any more questions in? It's hard when you're all on mute. I can't have you all confirm that you're still there.
It looks like we have one other question coming in.
Okay.
Linda wanted to hear from Brian about his recruiting in prisons, if Brian would be willing to share.
All right, Brian, you're unmuted. You can share. Brian, we see that you said yes, and we believe you're unmuted. Perhaps we've unmuted the wrong individual.
Sue, while we're waiting, there was another question.
Yes, I see that Brianna has a question about chilling you and its use with high school students. Absolutely. We have several different, actually many different high schools that are using our content in what's often a 2+2 program. So it's often being used in conjunction with some community colleges, also being used with America Makes and different high school robotics environments in that perspective. That's not an area that I specifically work in, Brianna, so if it's something you want to learn more about, I'd be happy to connect you up with my colleague who works with the high school students, and she'd be happy to give you examples on the ways that our content is being used with high schoolers. But absolutely, absolutely.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can.
It was one of the mute buttons on the slideshow.
There you go.
Technology, great when you're smart enough to use it. So, Linda, what I did is I got in contact with the individual down in Columbus who works for the prisons, and I've gone to probably about 4 prisons right now, and it's usually a group of about 20 individuals that are close to being released. At this point, I've only hired 2, and I got a 50% success rate. I got one that I ended up getting rid of, and I got one that's working out great. I did find that, at least with the one guy that I have, I mean, he's just grateful to have another chance. I mean, my view was he did his time, and, can't hold something against somebody forever. So he came in, he appreciates the second chance, and he's doing well for us. But most of them are just going to the actual prisons. I get an email when they're doing a job fair. And I show up, get a table, and talk to the inmates.
Thank you, Brian. If you could add what type of a job you have this individual doing? And if they came in skill ready, or if you had to do a lot of training for them?
The one that we have that's still here, we brought him in for maintenance. He didn't have any industrial maintenance training. He had some, basic knowledge of tinkering with stuff. That was about it. I'm looking for both mixed people, not both, but a lot. Mixed people, shipping, receiving, general labor. And a lot of it's, not really super skilled. I can work with people. Like
Excellent.
I said, so far this guy's working out good. I mean, he did not have industrial maintenance skill, and they have him doing kind of not really skilled stuff, but he's picking up and he's putting forth the effort to learn.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you sharing the additional details. And Linda says thank you as well.
All right, as we're wrapping up, are there any other questions? Brianna or Linda, did you want to chime in?
Can you all hear me?
We can.
Awesome. This is Brianna. I just wanted to let anyone who's on the call know that we are working fairly closely with Tooling U and figuring out how we can even kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, improve, I guess, our workforce development outreach that we do, all of our different programs through a stronger partnership with Tooling U, including using it as an option for learning, related technical instruction learning for our apprenticeship consortium. So if any, some companies have barriers with getting their employees or their apprentices to certain classes at community colleges. This is just another way to learn that might be more accessible for various apprentices. So just wanted to let everyone know about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Brianna. Is there a specific apprenticeship program that you are working with?
We have our own state-sponsored consortium, but right now we are trying to develop a tool and die apprenticeship that would use Tooling U as the main related instruction platform.
Excellent. Thank you. And related to Brianna's answer, we do have outlines and frameworks for the related instruction for several different apprenticeship programs. So obviously Tool and Die is one of them. And if that's something you're interested in learning more about, again, please feel free just to drop me an email and I'll get you connected with the right people or I'll send the information out.
Thank you, Sue. All right. With that, I think we're going to conclude here. So again, we will send out our presentation and a few other follow-up items that Sue would like to share. So again, I appreciate all of you being here. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. And again, I thank you all for being here with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.